الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم.
Don't know where, like, I don't know, man. I genuinely think the only hope is Sharia law. And inshallah, if you stick to your deen strong enough, I think there will be competent enough people to bring that back, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, about Sharia law, people, whenever they hear about Sharia law, they only think about capital punishment, stoning to death and all that. And they don't know that just let's for example, stoning to death, you need 4 male practicing witnesses, and it's not just like that. So it is you should for someone to be punished, to be stoned to death. It's like doing it in the streets, not so, because no one is gonna know what you're doing behind your doors, closed doors. So unless you do it in the streets, then you deserve the capital punishment, because
I agree. I would 100% agree. And that's what I love about Sharia law, because I've looked into it. Even then with the capital punishment things, I think it's justified, you know? And I always say this, in fact, that's perfect. So I would say, and I always say this, I say, like, the people who own companies that run pornography, right, which is an industry which can only exist if young women are groomed and trafficked and molested when they're young, because women who haven't experienced that don't want to do it. It molests children. So if you wanted to molest a child back in the day, you would have to, I don't know how you would do it because I'm obviously not one of them, but now every kid has something in their pocket which molests them prior to puberty. And I always say, if I got my hands on one of the CEOs of these big companies, I'd capital punishment the guy myself. And people will sit there and say, oh, that's crazy, you're a psychopath. And I go, I'll tell you what's psychopathic is if you sign up for the US military and you go over to Afghanistan or Iraq or Iran, or if you look at the Israel-Palestine conflict, you sign up for a military because you want employment and fake fiat currency money, and you go shoot and bomb innocent families overseas because you want employment. That's psychopathic to me. So if you look at the capital punishment thing, like adultery, for example, I think the punishment for adultery is stoning. If you allow adultery into a nation, what happens? So you'll know this because this has happened with the black population in America, where I think 1 out of 4 times the dad stays, like 75% of the time it's a single mom raising the child. If you commit adultery, the family unit breaks. The young women then lose their hope in love, and they probably won't get married because they're traumatized, which then leads to women making things like OnlyFans and being promiscuous, all this sort of stuff. The young males no longer have a father figure in the house, which then puts crime through the roof. So when you allow adultery, you have a bunch of young men who no longer have a father figure in the home, and then things like murders and crime. Look at London. Things like murders and crimes go through the roof. So I think the punishment has to be capital, you know? And again, the distinction between public and private, and that if you look at the LGBT, for example, I think in Sharia, if you do it in private, it's between you and Allah. Like, it's between you and your creator. You know what you're doing. It is between you and Allah. If you take that into the public square and do it in front of people, it has to be capital punishment. I'm not having it where if I have 10 kids and I go into the city and I see rainbow flags everywhere in places that I'm paying, like if I drive along a road that I pay tax on, and there's bikini advertisements where women are pretty much naked for my 4-year-old son to see, that has to be capital punishment. I don't see why it wouldn't be, you know, but the private-public distinction is huge. People have been so propagandized when it comes to Sharia law. And I always say this to people, I'm like, the same people that want to send you to war, put you in debt, turn your wives, mothers, and daughters into prostitutes, and castrate and abuse your sons, if they tell you something is bad, it's probably not bad because they lie to you all the time. You know, it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And that's actually how I discovered Islam, is because all these people that are like the Matrix, for example, they were the people who are doing these things. If they're going to tell me Islam is bad, it's probably because they're lying as well, you know? I think people, if they just took an hour to look at Sharia law and look what it actually is, it's the perfect law system, you know. It's protection. It's not what's the word? It's not harsh. It's not oppressive, it's protective, you know, it stops the family breaking, it stops haram in the public. So again, I don't know how you would go about rewiring people's mindset when it comes to Sharia, but I think that's the only way you're going to solve these problems. And if you brought in a law system and it wasn't backed by things like capital punishment, what kind of law do you really have, you know? So for example, the adultery thing, or in the public promoting sex for children to see, if it was just a fine, again, you have fiat currency, which would be illegal in Sharia because it has to be backed by a solid asset. Rich people or people in control could just pay the fine and keep doing it. It has to be backed by something, you know? So inshallah, I would love to see it one day where one man sacrificed enough and gave enough to Allah for him to grant him the strength to bring in something like Sharia, because I think that's the only way you're going to wipe the smut out nowadays, you know, because it's went so far in the haram direction that you really need something strong to come in and just take it all out, you know?